and welcome to 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking three powerful questions. I'm your host, Rachel Vogel, and joining us for tonight's episode is Ryan Butler. Ryan serves as the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for the Recording Academy. In this role, he's responsible for ensuring that the Academy's core values remain embedded throughout all aspects of the organization, including staff culture, membership, awards, advocacy, and related programs. Within DEI, he's led various efforts, including the launch of the Academy's first ever Black Music Collective, and he currently serves on the Warner Music Group's Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Board. So, with all that said, Ryan, thanks so much for being here. How's it going?
Hey, Rachel, thank you for having me. It's going well. I'm excited to get into this, and it's always good to, share your insights and expertise about something. So I'm happy to be here today and to make that happen.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to hear all of your answers. So let's jump right into it. Imagine for a second you're sitting down with your 25-year-old self. What one piece of advice would you give him on a personal note? And what one piece of advice would you give him from a business perspective?
Ooh, that is such a good question. On the personal side, I think both of them have to do with time. And one of them is instant gratification. Like it's not a
Mm,
thing. Don't let it be a thing. That, you can't just show up one day, work hard one day, and expect that that is going to, accomplish everything that you want to accomplish or that you'll be ready for, the next thing, right? That
mhm.
don't be in search of instant gratification, and that if you want to be great, take the time to be groomed for greatness, and that will take more than just yourself. You'll have to have people around you that are great, and that you learn how to be great by surrounding yourself with other great people.
Awesome. So, does that go for personal and professional?
It does, but that's kind of just like in general, like
Right.
personal, because I feel like, if I want to be great at yoga, right, then I should be around other great people at yoga. I should have great yoga teachers, right? So not
Mhm.
just professional, but I do think it can be applied to professional and personal. But professional, I would have some different advice for my 25-year-old self.
All right, that's great. Yeah, I think especially everyone always says it's who you know and it's the relationships that you have. But I think compared with that, it's the relationships that you have, but also making sure that they're positive relationships
Correct.
and that they're helping you in all ways.
Exactly. Absolutely. Professionally, I think I would tell my 25-year-old self that you only really have your work product and your reputation, and to really make sure you take care of both of those, right? And that there may be, some shortcut, some ways to get around things, but ultimately you really have your reputation and your work product, and that you
Mhm.
should, treasure those and hold on to them, and to make sure that they're always at their best. I think that that's really important, because in the music industry especially, right, it's a very small world. And I like in working with one colleague, today that's at a major label, and tomorrow she's at a streamer. I'm working with
Right.
a colleague, here at the academy, and we're working together trying to convince this label about something, and then, all of a sudden this colleague is now at that label. And so I just think, your reputation and your work product are very important, and not to burn bridges, especially in the music industry, because it's such a small industry that you're bound to come back around and have those full circle moments with people. So just make sure that your reputation, your work product is always intact, and that you're not burning bridges.
I'm just starting out and I already can attest to that. I've already come back around with people that I've interned with people that I've had calls with like 3 years ago. It's
Yeah.
crazy, but it's definitely real.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so I mean, and that can apply to your personal too. So like, we were talking about before. So I guess my advice to myself personally could also apply to my professional self, and my advice to myself professionally could also apply to.
Mhm. All
So
great advice. All right. Are you ready for the juicy question?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Every industry has its dirty little secrets, and we all know that it's no different in the music industry. Sometimes people think that's a bad thing, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they can be good. What's one secret you would like to share with our listeners about the industry?
Ooh, wow, that is juicy. I didn't expect that one. I don't know if it's much of a secret, but the music industry likes to have the narrative be that we're an industry about music and that we're an industry about the creators. But a lot of times when you get into these organizations, into these companies, into these agencies, you really find out that it's like any other business and it's about the bottom line. And that doesn't always mean that the creator or the creation are really the center of decisions, but really, what is the return on, what's the return on my investment? How much, revenue are we talking about? Is it, am I going to be able to go into the board meeting and say that, that we, made this much money with projections of this much money over the next 5 years? And I think a lot of times the creator and the music itself get lost in operation, get lost in translation, right? And that we love to think that we're, a business of music. But a lot of times we're a business like any other business that's really about money. But what I love about my position at the Recording Academy and what I actually love about the Recording Academy, and yes, we're known for the Grammys that happen on that one night a year, but the other 364 days of the year, we're really working and advocating on behalf of the creator. And we get to celebrate, creators and the best of the creators on Grammy night. But the other 364 days of a year, whether it's our advocacy department in Washington, D.C., who's, lobbying on Capitol Hill to make sure that creators are getting the right performance royalties and that, that their trademark and their copyright and their IP overall are protected in ways that, will allow them and their families to live for, generations, because, we owe that to these artists. And, or whether it's Music Cares, where we get to go and help, those creators who may be hitting hard times or going through, something personal in their life, or have unexpected medical costs, or have addiction issues or mental health, So for me, I just love that, I get to wake up and I get to represent and fight on behalf of music and its makers. And I'm not saying that there aren't other companies out there doing that, but I know that it's core to our mission and it's what, this organization was founded for. And so I do like to think that at the Recording Academy, it is about the music community, because we really want to make sure that the creators and the music that they make are at the center of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely the important work that nobody really thinks about, I think, because right away when you think of the music industry, you think of major labels and marketing and A&R signing the artist. But so that honestly leads me into a question that I didn't prepare you for, but I would love if you could just share like how you got into working in DEI and well, yeah, what kind of drew you into that?
I think, DEI practitioners, and you'll hear, a lot of those that are in the work now, right? That it's kind of embedded in us. It's in our DNA that we can look back and see, that I taught at an HBCU for 10 years. So obviously I was on the other side of these DEI pipelines that a lot of companies were setting up. I worked on programming called Dream when I was at Hampton University, which is for, diversity reimagined, evolving all music. And so it was really about us, having in place the things that we see now, right? That there is a focus and an intention on increasing representation. At my age, for my generation, there was no, my major is going to, be in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm
Right.
sure there isn't that now, but there's certificate programs and there's a focus on it in undergrad. And if you wanted to get into HR, do you want to, be in the diversity portion of HR? If you want, if you want to do social impact, I mean, there are now things that are happening on campuses that would prepare somebody for or internships. And, I have internships, like there weren't internships in DEI. I say all of that to say that I think a lot of us were doing DEI work before it was actually called DEI work. And I really always told my students, you take your intelligence and you match it with your passion and you will find your purpose. And so for me, I was able to do this work, right? But I was also passionate about it. And I woke up every day and it was, whether I was advocating for students, right? And pushing for the companies that I was, hoping would hire them, pushing them on diversity or starting these programs or, being before we had official DEI at the Recording Academy, that I was the chair of our diversity and inclusion committee on staff council. I think that it was just always in me. And so I was prepared for the opportunity when it came along.
Nice. Very inspirational.
Oh.
All righty. We're already at the last question. So here we go. Throughout your career, I can only imagine you've been asked lots of questions, whether for an industry conference, the media, or even a promotion. But throughout all of those interviews and all of those questions, I'll bet there was one that you've never been asked but would have liked to. So what is that question and what would be the answer?
Well, funny is you asked me the question today about the dirty little secret that all of us know that we don't really talk about. And I shared that. So that's always been a question that, not necessarily, I'm afraid that they're going to ask, but like, how would I answer that question?
Well, there you go.
Did it. I do think, a question that I don't often get asked, and you did ask me even before we started recording, is to actually say, how are you doing? And not for it to be like, because it's the nice social gesture, right? Or because I'm, trained and programmed to say, hi, how are you? But not necessarily really be caring about what your answer is. But I will say that for me, I wish that more people would ask, like, how are you doing? Especially in my line of work, like in diversity, equity, inclusion, you're dealing with work that's not always clean. It gets a little messy. It gets a little heavy, right? Things happen in the country. And then, all DEI professionals and practitioners are called on to like save the day or to come up with the solution. And we are human as well, right? And so I just think, in general, in your organizations, at your job, in your schools, wherever it is, like, check on those that are doing this work right now and see how they're doing and that make sure that they're all right as well, so that we can make sure that we're all taking care of each other, because DEI practitioners are often left with the burden of making sure that everybody's okay and that everybody feels like they belong, and rarely are people checking on us. I'm fortunate, I have a great team. But it is something that I worry about for my fellow DEI practitioners.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking, Rachel.
Of course. Well, Ryan, it has been so great having you on tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to chat.
Absolutely.
And to everyone listening, I know you enjoyed hearing from Ryan just as much as I enjoyed speaking with him. So stay tuned for next week's episode of 3Q, where I interview industry professionals for just 15 minutes by asking 3 powerful questions. See you next time.